Chungheo asks whether it is really okay for to not be present on the three-summit meeting of the fortress. Jaehwan trusts Kaiman that he can take care of it, as he assumes that Kaiman now is probably stronger than the old man, which makes Chungheo angry, saying that Brad is still 100 years too young to be able to defeat the divine physician. That's when Chungheo reveals that he awakened through the wrong keyword to the third stage. And Jaehwan obviously knew already, saying that one starts awakening with another keyword, the direction would be different. That surprised the old man, so Jaehwan starts explaining it. He knew that from the way he saw Chungheo's unique world was different than Jaehwan's. The origin story from the old man, everyone in the ruptures, including him, all awakened via the same keyword. The second stage of awakening was assemble, and the final and the third stage was self-surrender. The awakening Chungheo knew wasn't that profound. It was simply achieved by cutting down his foes on the battlefield over and over again. His first keyword was dismantle, which didn't have questions, assemble didn't have anguish, and he was able to awaken without any question and anguish. However, Jaehwan is different. Jaehwan questioned the reason for his existence, and understood the reason for the world's existence and anguish over it. Because of that, there was endless questioning and anguish. Its path where even after obtaining the unique world, one would need to endlessly think about the legitimacy of that world. It's a path of thorns. Then, Chungheo asks how old Jaehwan now, because as far as he knows, Jaehwan trains on the third floor, which denser than the first and second floor. Jaehwan smiles as he reveals that he trains for 1,000 years in the tower, which Chungheo unable to bring himself to believe. Jaehwan then starts messing with the old man, saying that it's true and he is now older than Chungheo, not the 60 years old kid anymore. Before long, they start their journey again. They previously stop in the oasis to rest while going on foot toward Manticore, the headquarter of the Forbidden Heaven clan. On the way there, Chungheo asks whether Jaehwan really going to the Resurrection Palace after, which Jaehwan says that he is. Though, Chungheo explains that the Resurrection Palace is a formidable foe, saying that it's not too late to attack it after Gorgon has more awakened. That's when Jaehwan questioning whether the monarchs will wait for them, which they won't, remembering how the low-ranking monarch has come to Gorgon to face Kaiman. For now, the monarch's probably waiting for Gorgon to gather awakened before making a move. That's why they need to ambush them when they are not expecting it. Jaehwan's priority is to steal the fruit, and along with it, he wants the treasure of the mares that turns the living into the dead. An artifact called the Narrow Gate that allows someone alive to enter chaos. So, if Jaehwan steal the fruit and destroy the Narrow Gate, the monarchs probably can't cross over to chaos anymore, unless they are willing to die. And in order to do that, Jaehwan must cross this place, as he arrive at the gate of Manticore Fortress, the place where it has an alley that leads to the Resurrection Palace. Jaehwan speeds up towards the gate, and currently, Manticore Fortress is occupied by the Forbidden Heaven clan, so Jaehwan only needs to beat them up. He activates his spirit power while gathering it into the tip of his sword, then he thrusts again, doing what he has always done. Though, even that it's too late now, Chungheo tries to talk to Jaehwan, suggesting to just sneak around without anyone knowing. Instead of fighting the whole fortress with just the two of them, the people start swarming towards the duo, and that has become the point where they can't go back anymore. Jaehwan prepares his stance like he usually does, performs his slight thrust repeatedly to the cannon fodder from the Forbidden Heaven clan members. Meanwhile in the fortress, Jinhan now knows that the rumors weren't exaggerated while looking at Jaehwan decimating his members. From the destruction of the north branch of the Forbidden Heaven clan to the Path of Waves, they are all done by Jaehwan. If only Jinhan had seen how Jaehwan killed the 99th boss, he would have noticed that Jaehwan is the product that the Monarch of Pitch Darkness wants him to find. Suddenly a pink-haired girl appears, commenting how Jinhan looks deep in thought, while feeling all excited looking at Jaehwan. And no wonder that Pitch Darkness wants him. She is Siren, a mare that appears on the product video that went viral. Though, Jinhan mad at her, telling her to wear those vulgar clothes at her own residence and not in chaos. She simply tells him back to look at his brown straw mat that he is wearing before he comments about her clothes, as she sits down saying that martial artists always think that the place they've acquired is also Miram. She then brushes him away, taking the window system to herself to watch how Jaehwan fights against the mobs of the Forbidden Heaven clan. That makes him agitated, asking whether she comes only to annoy him, so she explains that there is something interesting that happened. Siren reveals to Jinhan that Jade Mask Golden Monarch has appeared in chaos, but he knows that already, as all of his forces sent to Garuda right before they were about to take over are all dead. After looking into it, it was done by the Jade Mask Golden Monarch. Then he knows that he won over Garuda and Dryad in return for helping them. The treaty where the Supreme Monarchs won't interfere with Chaos seems broken, and now Chaos become a proxy war of the Monarchs of Almighty Land. But then, she reveals what he doesn't know. It was the news where the Jade Mask Golden Monarch got beaten to death by one of the 10 clan leaders, the Southern Sea Clan leader, Kaiman. That surprises Jinhan, because he can't believe that, even if Kaiman had hidden his power so far, he is sure that there's no way Kaiman would do something that stupid. The Jade Mask Golden Monarch is one of the monarchs under the Iron Steel Monarch, one of the 12 supreme monarchs that rules over the almighty land. Any monarchs that's brigadier general and above are all important people since the almighty land is in the midst of a power struggle. That aside, Siren asks what would Jinhan do with the product. Because of his negligence, Jiwon become a fortress master, and that would enrage Pitch Darkness if he know his product was poking things around like that. Though, Jinhan says that it's okay, because he already sent out the dead demon warriors, the monster that Siren made that can use the power of the dead. Outside, Jiwon finishes dealing with the cannon fodder, and Chungheo notices that something is off, because there's no way the Forbidden Heaven clan fought the whole of Chaos with just that level of troops. Though, Jiwon realizes that there's more of elite members from the clan as they show themselves. That shocks the old man, wondering how they can possess such evil energy as if he is looking at the dead. Someone from above the building calling out to Jiwon, asking whether he is the famous Pathfinder whose name has been going around. He feels that it's an honor to meet the protagonist of the viral rumors, as he jumps down from the roof with his men. It turns out that the man also knows Chungheo, but the old man fails to recognize the man as he asks who he is. With a red spear in hand, he reveals that he is the man who gathered the horns for the clinic, and transported patients as well. That's when Chungheo remembers that he is Heinz, the righteousness warrior. So the old man asks what is guard of Gorgon like Heinz doing in the Forbidden Heaven clan. That angered him, reminding Chungheo with what he had experienced in Gorgon. It was 100 years ago. Gorgon was in a war with a clan known as the Crimson Martial Clan, which no longer exists in Gorgon. As Chungheo comes back to Gorgon, the Crimson Clan come in his absence. A total of 50 guards including the Southern Inspection Gate Captain had ceased to exist eternally because of the Crimson Martial Clan's ambush. One that survived the day is only Heinz. Right as he recovering, he begged the divine physician to help him becoming stronger. But Chungheo gave him a cold shoulder, explaining that he fully understands the sadness and despair that the weak feel. But as he brushed him away, he claims to have seen countless such people during the 1,000 years he has lived in chaos. Chungheo left as he apologizing that he cannot grant Heinz's request. The old man literally leave a lost soul, and dares to ask what he was doing in the enemy fortress. Not only that, Heinz take off the cloth that covers one side of his face, raining horror to Chungheo's face. Heinz screams, he worked hard to protect the justice he has protected his whole life, and worked hard to break that belief. Jiwon is silent this whole time, while the old man having a nice chat with some random guard. That's when Heinz reveals that the weak righteous warrior who was a second stage adapter died 100 years ago. He becomes the vice clan leader of the Forbidden Heaven clan. He wields a red spear, enveloped in his crimson spirit power, challenging Jiwon to a battle of thrust. Heinz summons all of his power, performing his technique called Balkan's 8 Fangs, and with it appears Red Wolf with their mouth open and thirsty for blood. Jiwon activates his spirit power. Using his soul eye, he thrusts the mobs of spirit of the dead. With that slight thrust alone, Jiwon already able to hold the power from the vice clan leader, who for the past whole chapter boasting his power, challenging Jiwon like he is the sky himself. He got pushed back, asking how the hell did Jiwon able to do that, so the other dead squad come joining in. That instant the rest of the Forbidden Heaven clan comes swarming in to surround the duo. But Jiwon is not fazed with what happened. He stay focused and ready to welcome anyone that come at him. Meanwhile, inside the fortress, Jinhan is so shocked, he can't believe that the dead demon warriors are being cut down so easily. Even if himself, who's about to reach the level of the monarch, attacks Jiwon with the rest of the dead demon warriors, then he believed they could defeat Jiwon. However, he can't even begin to imagine how many losses they would incur if they fought head-on with him. So if Jinhan lose all of them, all of his plans they have made would be ruined. So he calls out to Siren, implicates asking her to deal with Jiwon, but she refuses, asking him not to trouble her more with that. She already did everything per his request. The research for the Spirit Stone is complete, and she already made the Black Cloud and created dead demon warriors. But Jinhan insists on it, so Siren sighs as she agrees to help, though before that, she offers him a deal. Meanwhile, outside, Heinz is terrified with the fact that Jiwon is really as strong as the rumors says. Jiwon is the new Gorgon Fortress Master, the legend of the Path of Waves, and the pathfinder of an impossible path. He obtained all those nicknames in just a single month, and none of them are righteous. Though, Heinz releases dead power, as he can't believe someone who hasn't even been in chaos that long could become a fortress master. Even for a warrior like Heinz who has been around for 200 years couldn't. He releases all of his power, combining with the dead within him, saying that he won't accept that, and readily to go against the Gorgon Fortress Master. He dashes forward, screaming how he will show Jaehwan his true power. The thrusts come like a lightning, that fortunately Jaehwan is able to evade by jumping to the side. The blast is so powerful that it manages to create such a huge explosion on the ground. That's attack is not only directed to Jaehwan, but the other Forbidden Heaven clan members also get hurt as well. Even some gets incinerated by it. Heinz then points his spear to Jaehwan again, saying that is the power that he has obtained by giving up and trampling on his beliefs, thrusting his spear with rage, adding that is the power he has gained from working hard. But Jaehwan is not afraid, instead he wants to put an end to it. That instant, a blue light appears right in front of Heinz. It's so wide and quick that he has no chance to dodge it. Jaehwan's normal thrust, he performs it to the vice leader of the Forbidden Heaven clan. Heinz get pushed back a bit, as the dead cell spreading further into his body, while Jaehwan asks whether Chaos only have petty people like him. The other members shocked witnessing how Jaehwan destroyed half of the vice clan leader's body, who's close to being a 9th stage adapter. They then start swarming to Jaehwan again, intending to buy time for Heinz to recover, while Chungheo hold off the members that he could. Jaehwan is angry, for everyone's keep talking about putting in hard work, while all they did are talking about their own efforts. So he gathers more of his spirit power into the tip of his sword, then he thrusts it. The strong thrust that he rarely used to deal with small fries like them, to deal with a numbers instead of strong opponent. A blue light shines from the explosion. While in the face of such power, Heinz's body get incinerated, so he slowly let go of his spear. But then, the moment he let go, he moves into a different dimension, a place where he knows nothing about. It was the crimson eyes that Jaehwan possesses, a tree that towering the world, that makes Heinz wonders whether it is the unique world of an awakened that he has only heard about. He completely turned to dead, as his body slowly returning to dust, becoming nutrients for the illusion tree. With the last consciousness he has, now he knows that is how the world look like to someone who doesn't submit to the world. The eye that sees everything in the world, makes rule and monitors it. In the end, Heinz can only expresses how Jaehwan is truly amazing, such an amazing crazy bastard, as he thoughts how if he doesn't give up the path of being the righteous warrior back then, would he able to chase the same dream of Jaehwan's path. So, Manticore with its millennia of history were split into two just like that, with a single thrust that Jaehwan uses which doesn't even consume his spirit power. Then, they start walking towards the fortress while ignoring the rest of the members that survived the thrust. Now, everything that Jaehwan's thrust touched was split in half, was died in his unique world, and Jaehwan claims that he is simply thrusted with all he has. Thanks to that, their plan will progress smoother, as they can't feel the spiritual pressure of a lieutenant general rank at all. But then suddenly, a pink light appears from above the sky, as a woman expresses how she ended up too late entering the battle. Using a space manipulation technique, a transcendent rank space teleportation skill, warp, Siren appears joyfully, saying that she can't believe who the dead demon warriors are afraid of Jaehwan. Though, there is only one race that can use that skill, that Jaehwan obviously doesn't know. The flustered Siren asks whether Jaehwan watched this week's Hot 10 or Tower of Tower show at all. She was the host on the show, which Jaehwan also doesn't know. Chungheo blushes with her appearance, as she explained that she is a mare and all the men in Chaos know her. So she introduces herself to Jaehwan, a mare known as Siren Armeld. But Jaehwan still doesn't care about her, asking her to step aside as he thoughts that he is running out of time. But Siren refuses, saying that she received a request to stop Jaehwan, the product that everyone in Almighty Land is looking for. Recognizes her as an enemy. Jaehwan doesn't wait any longer and starts preparing his stance to thrust. That flusters Siren further, asking Jaehwan to wait a minute, then asking him to become her product. As she reveals that the person who asks her to stop Jaehwan, Jinhan, is now on the verge of death after taking Jaehwan's thrust earlier. But Jaehwan doesn't listen and perform his thrust that Siren playfully dodge, repeatedly asking Jaehwan to become her product. Though, Jaehwan feels that her spiritual pressure is definitely stronger than what he has felt outside the fortress so far, and he assumes that Siren might even be on the major general level that he has heard of. She says that pitch darkness is after Jaehwan, while claiming that she will able to hide him if he become her possession. Then she will make it so that no one in the 12 regions will be able to touch him. But no thanks, Jaehwan answered. That left her no choice but to start fighting back. She uses her authority magic as a mare and summons quite a numbers of sand serpents from thin air. The serpents start attacking Jaehwan, as she says that Jaehwan is welcome to change his mind, and how she doesn't like to waste unnecessary strength. Flying up above, Siren watches from her display window pop up while her summons get thrusted by Jaehwan. It basically turns into games for her when he commands the serpents to where and how to attack. That makes Chungheo mad, saying that there will be no end to it. So Jaehwan thrusts his sword on the ground, blasting the sand around and hides behind the sand dust. That instant, he jumps around between the sand serpents towards Siren high up on the sky. Though, she laughs while revealing that she can see everything he is doing from her screen. Suddenly a massive serpent appears, manages to chase him with a wide open mouth. Siren says how he is more naive than she thought while the sand serpents swallow him whole. She tells him to cool his head in there and to think carefully, then explaining that she is the one that losing out on her proposal. Siren, the bewitching flame that easily gets #1 on the popularity vote in Little Brother. But then, the serpent explodes, and from behind the dust Jaehwan jumps up towards Siren again, surprising her, whether he already materializes his visualization. Jaehwan then chokes her while she smiles joyfully, as he asks her whether she wants to keep going or not. Though, he also thoughts that she bears no hostility toward him, then if he spares her life and bring her along, she might be of help on the way to the abyss. And maybe Jaehwan could even find out information about the first mare that's said to be at the top of the illusion tree. Siren tells him not to joke around with her, as she controls the sand to send them flying up to the sky that makes Jaehwan lost the grip on her neck. She expresses how it's a pity that she almost got her hands on him, as he uses her rap skill again that makes Jaehwan think she is running away. But then, she appears behind Jaehwan, hugging him passionately asking whether she surprises him. Suddenly there's a strange energy that flows around his body to Jaehwan's eye. Siren uses her skill, the real 8 gates of hell, trapping Jaehwan to its test while Siren also joining him, saying how he doesn't look surprised about it, where he then explains that it's a technique he has experienced before. Siren is ecstatic, saying that her technique is different from that fake 8 gates of hell he knows of, because that skill is originally made by a mare. Back then, Jaehwan easily defeat the 3rd gate, so now, he also easily defeats the gate one by one. At the 4th gate, Black Chain of Hell appears going to bind him, but Jaehwan easily destroy it with his non-stop thrusts. On the 6th gate, the Frost Hell, the Frost Dragon appears again, but this time, Jaehwan is so much more powerful than he is back then when he defeat the dragon, so with a single thrust he slays it. That surprises Siren, asking whether Jaehwan really is a human, then Jaehwan asks her back whether she has another trick to show. That makes Siren so dumbfounded. While smiling she tells Jaehwan that the next gate will be tough. Suddenly a purple light appears behind Jaehwan. It was a huge gates. The hands that on the gate move to open the door slowly. A weird liquid flow through the door, and once the door fully open, the water simply bursting filling the room. Chill runs down from his spine as the water flows through reaching his foot. Along with it, the memories of his deaf comrades that fought with him at the tower appear. Jaehwan falls silent, as Siren says that even Jaehwan would struggle, because ever since the skill, 8 gates of hell created, no one has ever gotten past the 7th gate. Not only that, appears 1,000 man from behind the door, with a sword in hand. They ask who Jaehwan is. They are Jaehwan's past self, from when he is still newly came into the summoning ground. From the moment of the fight with the Frost Dragon, also from the moment where he manages to fight against Beastrain. The 7th gate also called Self-Hell, as they ask again who Jaehwan is. From further down the line, his past life as a student, a kid, and even from when he has to join the army. They are from different times, yet they are all Jaehwan. So he grits his teeth, preparing what's about to come. And not only they are all himself, they are also have the same technique. That makes him feels how interesting it is for his past self to band together to point their sword at Jaehwan. In the end, he dashes forward as they also come together with their own weapon. The only thing Jaehwan thinks of is that he must make the first move and engage in a battle of technique to take them down. As they trade blows, Jaehwan realizes that except for a few, the rest only know how to thrust, which makes him realizes how offensive that is to be thrusted by himself. So Jaehwan swing his sword towards the closest copy of him. From the body part comes out smokes that seems to be not a normal smoke, while at the same time, they come together again to strike. Suddenly, from behind appears another Jaehwan. That fortunately he manages to react and strike his abdomen, instantly killing the copy. As the upper part falls down, with horror on his face, he asks Jaehwan to stop. Then the copy turns to smoke, enough to envelop Jaehwan. That takes him to his memories, where his fellow soldier bathes in blood, apologizing to him. The memory he had right before he entered the tower. The man is Jaehwan's successor, and also counselor. All the unreasonable harassment that was done to him caused him to shoot all his predecessors and executives to death in the middle of the night. Jaehwan was the only one in the unit who survived. All the leaders, the platoon commanders, and even the battalion commander were replaced. Jaehwan was acquitted of any suspicions because it was proved in the diary he wrote that Jaehwan wasn't one of the people who harassed him. But Jaehwan still got thrown into prison for 15 days, where he repeatedly blaming himself that he could have saved him. That when Jaehwan started to hate the system, way before he came into the world of skills or status. Though, that didn't stop him, he swung his sword again. This time, the memories shown him to when he is still a student. While wondering whether he might already be living in a world of the system, he had lived in a world where a huge system suppresses individuals. He slay another copy of himself. This time it reminds him of his mother that he forgot for hundreds of years of thrusting. Another to write at the moment when he is about to die. And another where all of his comrades happily walks by his side to climb the tower. It's not merely copy of Jaehwan's, and all of them have the same thing. They are calling out to Jaehwan, asking him to stop killing them and also to save them. One of his copy lay down in the ground as he is going to turns to smoke, asks who Jaehwan is again. That shocks him, tears appears on his eye, and with only sanity he has left Jaehwan thrust his copy again and again. Though all of that becomes clear that at this moment, Jaehwan is forgetting himself as Siren speaks, asking how does the 8 gates of hell feels. She adds, Awakened say that self-surrender is becoming a new existence and forgetting their original self. Awakened like Jaehwan that has experienced self-surrender are even more vulnerable to the 8 gates of hell. Even a mayor would experience committing suicide to take their own life because they can't handle their ego that has gotten so large, let alone a mere human like Jaehwan. Whether he can deal with all of that egos of himself. Though, outside of Jaehwan's consciousness, Chungheo sweep around dust trying to wake him up. It's not, as both of Jaehwan and Siren is trapped inside the illusion of the 8 gates of hell. Those are memories that he had thrown into self-surrender, and this place, the world where he has to kill himself in order to move forward. Exactly as its name says. It's hell. At one point before Jaehwan losing himself, he sees Kaiman talking with Chungheo from where they were teaching Kaiman. He asks what exactly is awakening, where the old man explained that awakening is learning to see. Awakening is the ability to see the truth of the world. Chungheo explains further that awakened would see the value which are the truth of world, and see the particles that make up the world. That's also the stage of self-surrender that's mentioned in awakenings, and an awakened needs to be careful of neglect. Being able to see so many things would make one blind that much quicker. That's when Jaehwan realizes that is the neglect that the old man mentioned. Those who see too much would become blind quickly. One would become desensitized quickly if they hear too much. But Jaehwan questions himself whether all of it really matter. Jaehwan did his best to come this far, from the moment where he was in the army, through the hardship when he was in school. And no one was able to come this far, while all he wants now is to say that he is having a hard time. He wants to hear someone say that it's okay not to be okay to him. Then he sees the wide sky. In the lonesome world he has, the thorn path he walks, where the sky filled with so many bright stars. Each star is the memory he made along his journey. His connection with his comrades that makes him realizes that he is not alone all of that time. But then, the question of who he is remains, where Jaehwan still doesn't know who he is, but what he knows for sure is that he is here. From the countless memories that he has forgotten as he trained in thrusts for 2,000 years, and the connections of all those countless memories. That is Jaehwan. Suddenly, the copies of Jaehwan simultaneously turning to dust, and at the same time Siren is throwing up. She can't believe that it's rebound from the technique as Jaehwan slowly opening his eyes. He opens his eyes, sending shockwave through the plane, shocking Siren as she knows that in her 2,000 years life, not even once the 7th gate was broken. But Jaehwan did it. The gates crumbles as he wonders what is beyond self-surrender. But for him now, he plans to go out of that place first facing the 8th gate of hell. Though, if he just talked to Siren, she would probably let him go, but Jaehwan decides to open the 8th gate of hell. The gates slowly open, welcoming Jaehwan into it. Inside, he finds a flat plain filled with water that seemingly extend infinitely roofed by a sky full of stars. Slowly the stars moves forming words that Jaehwan can understand. Now Jaehwan knows that the 8th gate is not a trial but a reward, as the message tells him that he would like to tell Jaehwan, who has passed all the gates of hell, while all Jaehwan thoughts that it must be a records left behind by the one who created the 8 gates of hell. The story continues shocking Jaehwan as he tells him that he still remembers the day the Abyss expedition departed. One that left the record is Mular Carmelt, and that is a record of his failure. While at the Manticore Fortress, Chungheo is trying so hard to wake Jaehwan up, as he wonders why isn't he waking up after all of that. The old man also brought along the mayor who used the technique on Jaehwan, but it seems that he won't be waking up anytime soon, even though he should be wake up once the mayor become unconscious, and the illusion should have been dispelled. On top of that, there are a lot of people from the Resurrection Palace had arrived at Manticore. Leading them is the highest adapter we have seen so far, 11th stage adapter, Hidden Scent Monarch Samyang Garam. That makes Chungheo panics, to think one of the main fighting force of the 9 regions would make his move at Chaos. But, as the old man hiding, the other low members from the Resurrection Palace fails to find him, but not Garam. He summons his spirit power, coating his hand with crimson-colored flame, telling Chungheo how he has done a great job running that whole time. Then he punches toward the place where Chungheo hides, calling out to them as rats. That instant, Siren wakes up and snaps her fingers, and when the fire burns the place where they previously hide, Garam finds nothing, assuming that they get away from Manticore. He then commands his men to reclaim Manticore, and to search for the Forbidden Heaven clan leader, while Siren lands with Chungheo and unconscious Jaehwan in tow at some random area in the desert. That was a close call even for her, as she thoughts on how many times she almost died just today alone. For now, she decides to go to Gorgon Fortress with them. That makes Chungheo thoughts that she might be surrendering. But that's not the case, as she just have business with Jaehwan, though maybe she want more thrust from him. At that point, Chungheo already sent a message to Gorgon, and about now additional warriors who were awakened must have departed. It is Kaiman announcing that Jaehwan sent a message to tell them that the Manticore Fortress has fallen, leading the army Carp Diem. The Liberation Army of Gorgon will depart past by Manticore facing and strike the Resurrection Palace. With a wave of his hand, Kaiman commands the army to charge, meeting the army from the Resurrection Palace under Garam. Mujuk dashes on the forefront, leading the charge and starts performing his technique to slay the enemy of Chaos. Right behind him is the Lightning God and the Fire King, with their resolve to liberate Chaos. Jeagle is ecstatic with how it is truly incredible. With an army of 300 awakened, he thoughts that they might win this time around. At the back of the opposing army, Garam sits down, expressing how that doesn't make sense. It is good that they would just stayed still and adapted to Chaos instead of revolting against the almighty land. Then he stands up. With his spirit power coating his hand, he clenches his fist and perform that decimating attack. A single blow sent waves of energy, cutting several people simultaneously along its path as he tells them that they are being overly ambitious. Jeagle is shocked with what on earth is coming to his way, though he doesn't have enough time to react and got hit by the attack, severely injuring him. Yon, that barely got hit, witness how his comrade, Jeagle, falls right in front of him. That shocks him, falling silent to the fact that High Adapter got struck down by a single attack. With Garam fully powered up, telling them to just go back quietly, releasing energy to notify every single person in Carp Diem army. Yon is enraged, telling the others to attack Garam first so together they are coming at him. But Garam is strong. He doesn't flinch facing such an army, so he clenches his fist again, calling out to them as fools, then strike his attack again. The shock wave from his attack sent another countless wave that cut everything in its path, that fortunately Yon manages to closely evade from the attack. Now, Gorgon's Liberation Army, Carp Diem, pushed all the way to the entrance of Manticore, meeting the army of the Resurrection Palace. But, with the appearance of the Hidden Scent Monarch, the tide of war turned completely against them. And 10 days later at Gorgon, Chiver carry out a meeting, talking about how that is a critical blow because they lost 5 third stage awakened that were a part of their main force. Aisha is afraid and telling the others to consider the Resurrection Palace offer, where Kaiman tells her to not forget and not to trust her skills too blindly, adding that they just need to pave the way. Though, at this rate, they have no chance of winning. Then she offers to ask for help from the other monarchs. She is talking about Hyo-Yo, the Monarch of Steel, because currently all of the monarchs that had been dispatched by the Resurrection Palace all belong to the 9th region, Pitch Darkness. And most people know that there is a long-time grudge between Strong Steel and Pitch Darkness. But, after Kaiman killed Jade Mask Golden Monarch, along with Emissary of Strong Steel as well, making them have no other option. So Kaiman speaks again, telling them that they must not get help from the other monarchs, because Chaos must be the ones to liberate Chaos. Somewhere else in the fortress, Siren and Chungheo is looking over Jaehwan, who's still unconscious. He attained the 4th stage of awakening on the 7th gate of hell, but yet to know the keyword to see the power of it. Suddenly, Chungheo is mad towards Siren, asking her to wake him up after putting him into that state with her skill, which she simply says to do something himself if he is that upset about it. That's when she explains that Jaehwan is able to break free from the 8 gates of hell, an unprecedented feat even for the strongest monarchs there is. She adds that it is a skill that weren't made for humans to use, and the true power of it can only be unleashed when a mare uses it. She also hoped that anyone can use that skill, and so she thought it to the Savant clan, since no one has ever been able to break the 8 gates of hell. She has seen it being broken a few times, though. She can understand why, those times, it was used by human after all. And what was broken was the mind of the user, not the skill itself. However, Jaehwan is different. Not only did he break her mind, but he broke the skill completely. He broke the 7th gate, which no one had been able to break, and arrived at the last and final 8th gate. She explained that the 8th gate is the gate of reward. Those who get past the 7th gate would be given a tremendous reward. Chungheo asks what is in the 8th gate, where Siren reveals that inside lies the legacy that her godfather left behind. Mullark. Suddenly Jaehwan wakes up, and he immediately asking how's the attack to the resurrection place went. After knowing that the attack had failed, he immediately preparing himself to go to the meeting room. Chungheo runs frantically, telling him not to go in there, explaining that there are people that are suggesting that they hand over Jaehwan to the resurrection palace. But Jaehwan doesn't care, as Siren laughs at how petty Chungheo becomes. That's when the door to the meeting room open, as the trio comes inside. Kangwon and Kaiman looks happy with how Jaehwan finally had woken up, while Aisha and Chiver feel ashamed to see him. But then, the first thing Jaehwan says is that he will go to the resurrection palace, shocking everyone in the room, including Kaiman, so he tells Jaehwan not to do that. While Yanyang is only can be silent with the defeat he experienced, that making him lost one of his arm. But then, he shouts asking whether Jaehwan knows that they lost a lot of comrades while Jaehwan is lying in bed, adding that they wouldn't have died if they hadn't come to know of freedom and hope. There wasn't even time to hold the soul farewell procession, while Jaehwan can only apologizes. Yanyang continues, and he hates Jaehwan to the core of his soul for giving Chaos life, giving them freedom, and also giving them hope. He starts crying, saying that despite that, they needs Jaehwan, asking him not to go to the resurrection palace. He would rather they all fight and die together. That shocks Chungheo, as he thinks that Jaehwan has given them something unbelievable that he shouldn't have. Now in order for them to protect what they have received, they will give up their lives for it. But then Jaehwan explains that it seems that all of them are mistaken about something. Jaehwan tells them that he is not going to the resurrection palace to surrender himself, shocking Yanyang, while Chungheo knows what about to happen. Jaehwan says that he will go to the resurrection palace to send them all flying away. That shocking news, Chiver, Chungheo including Aisha thoughts that Jaehwan is not right in the head, while Yanyang asks him whether he is out of his mind, while Jaehwan claims that he is always sane. Kaiman asks whether Jaehwan did just say that, and Kangwon asks when is he planning to do that. So Jaehwan says that he is going right now, making the mayor. Siren thinks that Jaehwan is a strange man, as she also thoughts that it seems like the world reality doesn't exist in his dictionary. But humans will always end up kneeling in front of reality, and she thoughts that no one will follow him. But the people of chaos is now different. One by one, Kaiman, Kangwon, Carlton, to the others are so determined to follow Jaehwan to their death. That shocks Siren, thinking that they all now are insane, wondering how they are standing up to the almighty land now. So far, they have been living with no problems as souls, and why would they suddenly care about freedom, a real life, and being liberated? So her sight pointing to Jaehwan, wondering whether that's all because of him. A moment later, he set up the strike team to the resurrection palace, and only need 4 people including him. The first person he wants to go with is Chungheo, the divine physician, Kaiman, the Southern Sea God clan leader, who seems to be so excited to go. And lastly is Siren, the mayor that about 2 weeks ago is so bent hell to stop Jaehwan. So that confuses her, while Jaehwan smiles, and it was the smile that they wants to see all this time. Jaehwan now is the man who never cease fight, however great the enemy is. The one who made miracles with his own 2 hands. The others tries to join in, but Jaehwan explained to them that they will have their own task as well and asks them not to be too disappointed. While Siren is insisting to not go. They are questioning whether it would really be the end once they destroy the resurrection palace, but Aisha now understand that after doing so, chaos will truly be united. Meanwhile, Siren is bullying Chungheo, saying all kind of stuff, while Jaehwan explains that even though they manage to destroy the narrow gate, the monarchs will still be able to go to chaos through dying. So they need to prepare for that situation that they can foresee, while Siren keep nagging him that she is not going. But then, Jaehwan asks her whether she wants to know what's in the 8th gate of hell or not, if so she needs to come with him. A moment later, they go to Siren's personal workshop, where Chungheo and Kaiman are looking and touching around her stuff, where she yells at them not to touch anything, and claiming that stuff was made by her godfather for her. She looks around on her system, while thinking that she can't believe she allowed others to come into her personal workshop. But she doesn't have a choice because Jaehwan needs the warp drive, which allows long-distance warps. Meanwhile, Chungheo is stumbled upon a tower that she made and he makes fun of it. It was a cringy tower called one who regressed 10 billion times. Siren is so embarrassed with it, claiming that was the tower that she made when she was 12 years old. While Kaiman is silently judging her with how weird her stuff is. Even Jaehwan also gets his hand on some weird tower that she made, question her creation and all. That makes her so embarrassed, thinking that she would just dancing naked rather than she has to go through that. Though, she realizes that they were people that were stuck in the space that the mayor created, and they were all once product. Then Siren is wondering, what would the workshop of a mayor that creates towers mean to them? Suddenly Jaehwan calls out to her, asking what is the name of the tower in front of him. Siren tells him that's called the World After the Fall, though she claims that the tower is still incomplete. She then reveals that the tower is the one she designed after she first met Jaehwan. That makes her wondering, as she doesn't know how Jaehwan would feel after seeing that tower. And another where she thoughts of the tower from a product's point of view. It's strange, but she now knows that something is wrong, as she tells the others that the warp gate is ready. Jaehwan at the forefront to warp to the Resurrection Palace, while Siren keeps wondering whether something that she feels is what make Mullark, her godfather, left the Abyss expedition. Beyond the alley at the castle of the Resurrection Palace, a monarch is overseeing the people that wants to go back to the Almighty Land. The current monarch who has to bear that is the Fog Monarch, Hitchmeyer. Two men calling out to him, saying that he is already on his 3rd year having to deal with overseeing the palace. Though, that makes him mad because they remind him of it, and with his power he take out the air that they need to breathe, choking them, while asking them whether they want to cease to exist for eternity. So they can only kneel while apologizing to the monarch. Now, it is explained that the monarchs that came to chaos after dying in their previous lives have a duty to perform. They will become the palace master until the next monarch dies and comes to chaos. Then, he thinks about some strange rumors after the Jade Monarch came to chaos, where he was defeated by an awakened of Gorgon. And now, he knows that those guys were forming an Abyss expedition while also going to attack the Resurrection Palace. That makes him think how foolish they are, thinking that here's no way they would come to the Resurrection Palace. While the people are queuing to enter the narrow gate, something happens at the gate behind them. Suddenly it explodes wide open. The being behind the gate starts attacking the people who were in line to be revived, and they immediately died. The energy from the attacks also blasting towards Hitchmeyer, where he instantly knows something strong is coming towards him and starts counter-attacking with his spirit power. The strikes meet in the middle equally, that makes Hitchmeyer thinks that they are at least on the same level. So he summons his weapon to dash toward the attacker. Once reaches the attacker, he vertically strikes him with all of he got, asking whether he is the Gorgon Fortress master or not. But it's not. One that deflects the incoming attack wields a blue sword with water spirit aura. It was Kaiman. Strikes Hitchmeyer back, saying that of course he is not the fortress master. Kaiman greets him, saying how it has been a long time, implicating that he knows the Fog Monarch, adding that he came to get his payback from 900 years ago, with Chungheo and Jaehwan follow suit behind. On the next round, Kaiman thrusts his sword 4 times simultaneously, yet Hitchmeyer manages to dodge all of them. To counter it, Hitchmeyer shoots his fog that blow up, filling the castle, impairing with Kaiman's sense. He is frustrated with the fact that he can't detect Hitchmeyer's presence, despite having trained so much. Though, as he questioning himself, he remembers how Jaehwan trusts in Kaiman, telling him that he can do it. So he closes his eyes, to believe in himself and in his senses. That instant, Hitchmeyer appears right on top of him, readily strike Kaiman down. With his soul eye, Kaiman sees it with his sense, so he evades the attack and counter it with his thrust. Hitchmeyer steps away, as he is unable to believe that Kaiman manages to sense his presence and manages to strike him. Then, Hitchmeyer can only thoughts on how arrogant Kaiman is, where he gain his believes on himself with the determination on his face. Jaehwan then says that he will go inside the Resurrection Palace with Siren, adding that Kaiman will able to handle the Fog Monarch. While Chungheo says that he will try to reduce the number of monarchs heading to the Pleasure Palace as much as possible with Kaiman. He faces off with the duo Fire Wheel Monarch and 7 Fear Monarch, where Chungheo dashes toward them, attacking both at the same time. They both are strong, with the power of a monarch, but Chungheo also determines to not back down from a fight like Kaiman, as they both reveals that there are dozen of brigadier generals that are protecting the fruits where Jaehwan is heading. Chungheo doesn't care about it. He tells them to just bring it on instead of talking rubbish. Inside the palace, the dozen monarch that they talked about is partying with all kind of women. The lowest rank monarch among them, timid monarch called Reika, informs them that there are a situation at the main gate. The second dragon monarch tells him to ignore it, adding that Hitchmeyer will deal with it. While the fourth dragon monarch expresses how the ladies in chaos are the best, while the other monarch also express their mind as well. The first dragon monarch can only wonders with what the people of chaos has to come knocking on the palace door. He then throws his glass towards Reika, telling him to go away and stop being so noisy. Reika is shivering, wanting to strike them with all of his power, but they are totally different breed, asking whether he wants to have a fight, which of course he backed down and will take a look for himself. While going away, Raymond swears that he will definitely get his revenge one day. But the first dragon monarch uses his spirit power to shock Raymond, making him terrified to even think of anything, as he expresses how he hates noise the most, commending how that Reika is a foolish rat bastard. But then, there's a warp coming, and of course the first dragon monarch is the only person that notices. From above, it was Jaehwan with a sword in hand and Siren coming falling down making an entrance. Only then the other monarchs realize what is going on, shocked and asking who that is. The first dragon monarch shouts, telling them to go away as Jaehwan strikes his thrust down right in the middle of their party. There again, Jaehwan stands nonchalantly surrounded by a half of dozen monarchs that wants to rip his head open. From behind the veil, the first dragon monarch knows that he is Jaehwan, the Gorgon Fortress master, where he asks whether Jaehwan come there himself, assuming that he is out of his mind. Jaehwan opened the veil, staring him in the eyes saying that he is not, adding that he came to kill all of them. He comments on how a lowly souls of chaos dares to say such a thing, while summoning his spirit aura manifested in a form of a crimson dragon. It shocks Jaehwan with the surprise attack, as Siren shouts at Jaehwan, telling him to be careful with it, while the crimson dragon strikes at Jaehwan, dragging him through the room. That ended up blasting him into the wall. Jaehwan used the wall to step, but is he going to propel himself to counter-attack? Two of the dragon monarch appear in front of him in that instant, shouting how dare he ambush them, the Resurrection Palace of all places. Fortunately, he propels himself to avoid the combined attack from them and only able to stop quite far away, as Jaehwan manages to hold his ground, readying himself to whatever will come again. The first dragon monarch comes out, saying that he will make Jaehwan pay dearly for disrupting his entertainment. The 5 monarchs, with their mighty strength, are all ready to strike Jaehwan anytime. With his golden eyes, Jaehwan is ready to welcome anything they have to give, while with his crimson eyes the first dragon monarch commands the other monarchs to strike. In that instant, together they starts jumping around to strike him, though Jaehwan doesn't just simply sit still and starts to perform his thrust towards them. Though both of the monarchs dodge them, while saying how foolish Jaehwan is, because his powerful attacks are futile if they don't hit anything. In the end, Jaehwan got pushed around, and he is having a hard time dealing with all of their consecutive attack without rests. A monarch shouts how he will have fun killing Jaehwan, where he keeps dodging then kick him in the face. While already having a hard time dealing with the 2 of them, the 2 other monarchs also dash toward them, joining the battle. In an instant, both of them come at Jaehwan at the same time, both using dagger, and manages to hurt his shoulder and the side of his stomach. One of them says that no matter how strong Jaehwan is, he can't win against them by himself, while the other claims that even a major general can't block their combined attack alone. Jaehwan responds to their provocation, saying that it is true that it's a little tough to deal with all of them individually. So he gathers all of his energy into the tip of his sword again, saying how annoying it is that he has to deal with annoying pests like them. It is a poor choice to let them gang up on him, resulting in how he got beaten up. But anyhow, he is furious, telling them that he will just send all of them flying away together. Then he strikes it, his strong thrust, massive enough that they don't have space to evade the attack. Meanwhile, from outside, Chungheo notices that loud boom from the inner palace, implicating that the kid started to fight as well, while simultaneously dealing with the low-rank monarchs from earlier. But a shock of horror appeared on Jaehwan's face as the first dragon monarch expresses how unfortunate it is, as he manages to block the thrust for all of the monarchs present. Siren is shocked, wondering whether the people that protecting the Resurrection Palace is really that strong. The first dragon wields a dragon sword, expresses how he is unable to believe that Jaehwan is ambushing the Resurrection Palace with only just trickery, so he asks whether Jaehwan is making a mockery out of them. He thrusts his sword towards the ground, claiming that he will show Jaehwan the difference between their strength, and finally releasing his spirit aura, calling out to Jaehwan as the vermin of chaos. Jaehwan is looking at the first dragon monarch's power manifesting into a fully formed dragon, with his crimson red eyes, grew so massive readily to launch at Jaehwan, as the first dragon claims that the technique is too valuable to be used on someone like Jaehwan. He then tells Jaehwan to fight with all he has from now on if he doesn't want to die. The dragon came with a lightning speed, as his roar filling the room with his mouth wide open. Fortunately, Jaehwan manages to evade by jumping in the air. With the little opening he has, he performs his strong thrusts toward the dragon. But his sword fails to even fully penetrate the barrier that protecting the dragon, as the first dragon monarch screams how Jaehwan will not even be able to leave a scratch on him and throws Jaehwan away. Right after Jaehwan lands on the ground, the dragon already has his mouth wide open, summoning a crimson orb going to perform his dragon breath. But Jaehwan doesn't even flinch. With his sword he meets the dragon's breath head-on, and for a moment, he manages to hold it, reaching an equilibrium between the two. But the first dragon monarch feels that he had enough out of it, so he puts more power into his breath, and finally the strike is able to reach Jaehwan, blasting him away into the wall. Smoke rise up, filling the room. The massive dragon feels satisfied after being able to land a strike to Jaehwan, as he waits around for the arrogant human to come out from the dust, saying what a pity that is. If Jaehwan would stayed hidden, he would have been able to live a longer life, and claiming that his arrogance has cut short his life. But Jaehwan doesn't care. He let the first dragon monarch to finish his sentence, and right after, he dashes, instantly appears right on top of the dragon's head. The dragon cannot believe with what just happened, but with his golden eyes, Jaehwan tells the dragon that it's his turn now. So the dragon summons more of his spirit power to strengthen his barrier, while saying that Jaehwan wouldn't be able to pierce through his scale. Then Jaehwan gathers all of his energy into the tip of his sword, attacking the barrier into a single point, while saying that they will only know after he tries attacking it. The first dragon monarch is panicking, realizing that Jaehwan is concentrating his attack on one spot. So he rampaging around in the air, fuming in rage, while saying that he won't let Jaehwan does whatever he wants. In attempts to shrug Jaehwan away from his head, the dragon slams his head into the ground. But as he tries to look for Jaehwan, expecting that he would be stamped in the ground, he finds nothing. Jaehwan then appears behind the dragon, scolds him for talking way too much, and performs his strike. Strong thrust, pointing into a single point towards the massive crimson dragon, piercing his barrier, and slams him right into the ground again. Even though Jaehwan's strike is thrust downwards, it shines through towards the sky like the saint had descended to chaos. Kaiman witnessed that light, assuming that it seems the fortress master he served did it, while he already defeated Hitchmeyer himself, including Chungheo, who defeats the monarch duo, nagging how simply just following Jaehwan around is tiring him out so badly. Jaehwan just standing there nonchalantly as the spirit energy that making of the body of the dragon dissipating. From quite at the back of the palace, Siren thoughts that Jaehwan was just acting rashly when he said only 4 people will be attacking the Resurrection Palace. But how wrong she is. The first dragon monarch appears from the spirit energy that left, and he is angry. So angry that he swear on his life that he will make Jaehwan regret it, claiming that he won't forget that humiliation and will definitely return to chaos to rip Jaehwan apart. But Jaehwan understand that they are coming to chaos through the narrow gate that surprised the monarch with how can he knows it. In the end, the monarch is boasting on it. Their souls are connected to the main body in the almighty land via their brain. By killing them will only returning them to their real bodies in the almighty land. Jaehwan doesn't answer. Instead, he swings his sword. Then the monarchs can hear ripping sound from above their head, shocking the first dragon monarch. Even though he doesn't feel any pain, the monarch knows that now his connection is severed as he screams on how Jaehwan actually manages to cut the link off. He stumbles as Jaehwan stands like a reaper in front of him while asking, how does it feel to face a true death? Reality fell down through his spine as the first monarch is unable to believe that the brain link is gone. Then he frantically screaming, asking what Jaehwan wants, and he will give it to him. The other monarchs are in their last breath, as the first monarch tells Jaehwan that he will talk to the monarch of pitch darkness, and he is sure that he will agree to any of his requests, as he keeps begging to Jaehwan to spare him and promise to not lay a single finger on the souls of chaos, while Siren watching with pity on her face. But Jaehwan doesn't care as he splits open his head, with the last of what the first dragon monarch see in his last moment is the cold death stare Jaehwan gives. His head flocks down like a rags of doll, while Reika, who is watching from the hall, is so shocked with the fall of the 5 dragon monarchs. He is originally wants to check on the commotion outside the palace, but to find that someone is able to sever the brain link is beyond what he knows of, as he is going to go back to the almighty land to inform the major generals of it. Chungheo appears behind him, asking on why he is peeking like a rat. With obnoxious face he asks Reika to whom he is going to report to. A moment later, both Kaiman and Chungheo walks into the palace. They also brought the 3 outer monarch and Reika along. They bring them to Jaehwan, as Chungheo asks him on why they need to capture them instead of just simply killing them. With a cold stare Jaehwan he explains that's because he needs to make sure they are dead for sure. With his black sword, he swings around his hand, cutting off the brain link one by one, shocking Reika, who witness it, thinking that the horror he sees is a nightmare. And it is explained that after the Resurrection Palace appeared, the monarchs obtain immortality. Mortals need to count the days they have left until they die since they have a limited lifespan. But the monarchs who gained infinite life because of the fruit don't need to. That's how immortality helped them to forget about death for the past 900 years. But Reika will soon die by Jaehwan's hands, and as of now, he is really scared of death, which he had forgotten all this time. In the end, he kneels in front of Jaehwan, begging for his life, as he explains that he had no intention of fighting from the start. So Jaehwan decides to let him be, because he needs a witness for something and asks where the monarchs keep the fruits. Without skipping a beat, Reika reveals that the fruits are being stored in the vault right in the middle of the palace ceiling, explaining that it's called Reverse, a vault made by a mayor of renowned artisan level. It generates passwords infinitely, and it would be hard to unlock it without the help of the Resurrection Palace Master that just died. He adds that things might be different if there's a renowned artisan level mayor who has exceptional skills, as Siren is jumping around implicating that she is one. But Jaehwan doesn't acknowledge her, saying that it won't be easy, but the only possible solution is to pierce through it with his thrust. Chungheo also thinks the same, asking him to control his strength well, including Kaiman that wishes they could have a mayor at the renowned artisan level. That makes Siren screams in embarrassment, telling them that she is right there. Though, a moment later Siren is able to unlock it easily, and the vault starts to open up. As the fruit lights start covering the room, Jaehwan thoughts how weak the security of the vault are, while Siren is claiming that because she just is too awesome. But for Kaiman is different. He feels that it's a surreal feeling that he waited for a long time. Because the Abyss expedition departed 900 years ago in order to obtain the things right in front of him. Joyous tears falls down from his eyes as he remembers how Jaehwan appears bringing hope to Chaos, one that helps him attain his current awakening power. And after such a long time, they have finally gotten it. The fruits falls down toward the four people of Chaos with their newly acquired hope. Kaiman, the Southern Sea God clan leader, where he is only a kid 900 years ago, now gets his hand of one of the most prized things in Chaos. But, after that dramatic memories, there are only a handful of fruits that are left, since the monarchs have used it for 900 years, and they almost run out themselves. And now, they don't even have enough to share among the people in Gorgon. Not to mention the whole of Chaos. Jaehwan sees how Kaiman got captivated by the fruit, so he offers it to the sea god, saying that it's okay for him to have it if he wants it. Jaehwan smiles, adding that Kaiman is more than qualified to get back his life. Then Jaehwan extends his hand, asking Kaiman to make a choice. While Kaiman is still overwhelmed with all of that, the fruit is on his hands, and he can get revived to the almighty land as a living being anytime. It's been a long for the people of Chaos to finally obtain the fruits. It has been a long fight and he went through really tough times. For many souls have been sacrificed in order to obtain the fruits, and indignity has been suffered. The fruits itself is a reward for all of those times. But, instead of using it, Kaiman destroy the fruit that's on his hand. Shockingly, all of the people present doesn't expect that, and seemingly including Jaehwan. So he asks Kaiman to tell him why he destroyed the fruit. That's when he explained that because there are only 10 of them left. The moment he held the fruit he realized that those 10 fruits will become the seed of conflict, adding that they will fight each other for the hope that at least 10 people will be able to get their lives back. And if that happens, Chaos will never be able to be saved again. Jaehwan then smiles, and he knows that was definitely a tough decision. It's not something that anyone can do. However, it needs to be done by someone of Chaos. So then Kaiman asks to Jaehwan to let him destroy the rest, and Jaehwan allows him to. And that's the only reason for Jaehwan to bring Kaiman along, the righteous leader that knows what to do in that situation. While Chungheo expresses how the rest would be in shock if they saw that. Though, Jaehwan also believes that Kaiman would do that from the start, because Kaiman would choose despair on his own and long for true salvation among that despair. And of course, Kaiman smiles wide open as he claims that he will not regret it for even a fair bit, where suddenly there's a movement from the ceiling of the palace. Jaehwan and Chungheo notices it, screaming at Kaiman to get away. A massive blast opened from the wrapped magic on the ceiling, right towards where Kaiman is standing, while Jaehwan can only witness the attack rains down on the sea god. Chungheo screams frantically as the mayor, Siren, is able to drag the old man away from the blasted area, telling him to get away. Jaehwan is shocked looking at Kaiman, who for the past 200 years managed to attain the strength of the third stage awakening unconscious after a single hit. Another shocking fact arrives as a major general storm monarch, Kanail, a 10th stage adapter, appears. He is angry by the fact that they ambushed the Resurrection Palace, calling out to them as vermin. He has a pair of white wings, getting angrier by the fact that Kaiman dared to destroy the fruits left in the vault. Chungheo shouts, so shocked while telling Kaiman to wake up. But suddenly, there's a hand grabs him, swinging him around and throws him to the wall, blasting him pretty badly. He He was another major general, Silence Monarch, Megiddo, also a 10th stage adapter from the Almighty Land. He blasts the old man pretty badly as Jiwon shouts at him, worried for his well-being. After that, another person appears, saying that Jiwon crossed the line in the end. And the trio generals from the Almighty Land appeared. All are angry at the party of 4 that break the fruits, as the last person is Garam, saying that it has now become a matter that can't be resolved with just their life. Jiwon knows that the 3 of them are strong, especially Samyang Garam. Even Reika is trembling with Garam's presence alone. He is a monster who's one of the 5 strongest major generals of the Almighty Land, finally revealing himself to Jiwon. A moment later, he calls out to the 2 major generals, Kanale and Megiddo, where they immediately knows what he wants. Together they dash toward Jiwon, as Kanale claims that Jiwon's head is his while Megiddo tells him to just not to get in his way. Meanwhile, readily welcoming the combined attack from them, Jiwon tells Siren to take Chungheo and Kaiman away with her. Megiddo express how he doesn't think that Jiwon would have the time to be worried about others now, and instantly using his spirit power, summoning a dark shadow hand and rooting Jiwon with it. Kanale appears right beside him, striking his hand telling Jiwon to die. Fortunately, Jiwon bends his body backwards and manages to dodge the attack from the Storm Monarch. Right after that, he dashes backwards to get away from the dark shadow hand that bind him, while Megiddo follows him up, also striking his hand telling that he will not going anywhere. Though, Jiwon manages to deflect the Silence Monarch's sword with his own, while realizing that Megiddo is indeed as fast. In that instant, they traded hundreds of blows, while Jiwon is thinking further that they are in a totally different dimension from those he has fought so far. Kanale appears again combining the timing with Megiddo, saying that they had high expectation of Jiwon since people were talking about him being the Gorgon Fortress master. But there's nothing much to see now, implicating that he looks down on Jiwon. Using his wings, he blasts a powerful attack towards Jiwon, blasting him away into the palace's wall. Jiwon throws up as he has to deal with the damage from the blast, when Kanale wonders whether he used up all of his strength on just the 5 monarchs earlier, and Megiddo says that no matter how Jiwon acts, he is still just at the level of an insect in their eyes. While Garam, who didn't join the battle yet, expresses how disappointing that is. A moment later, the duo prepare their spirit power attack again, claiming that they will end that with it. In an instant, together they dashes toward the rooted Jiwon on the wall, and with his golden eyes, Jiwon is so furious with how annoying both of the 10th stage adapter he goes against are, while it reminds him to at the times where he destroyed the Manticore Fortress with a single thrust. Chungheo expresses how the fortress that has a history that spans for thousands of years become ruins in an instant. He also says that Jiwon shouldn't call it a strong thrust, instead it should be called world thrust. After that, Chungheo suggesting that Jiwon should try to avoid overusing thrusts, as he explains that the Awakened can use spirit power without any restrictions, but in exchange, they will consume a certain amount of mental power, adding if Jiwon uses such a huge technique recklessly, he will be the one to collapse first. That's what makes Jiwon angry, because those people are at the same level as him when he first came to Chaos, and he needs to get rid of them now while they are underestimating his strength. After that, Jiwon break free from the dark shadow hand that bind him, appears right in front of the duo to welcome their combined attack. In that instant, he unsheathed his sword with the thoughts that he will end it in an instant without holding back his strength. His sword glows red, and this is the first time it ever happens. Using his full spirit and soul power, Crimson Aura enveloped Jiwon where he summons his unique world to perform his next attack. He screams as he thrusts, and in that instant, he performs 5 consecutive world thrusts towards the duo. In that split second, both Kanale and Megiddo are incinerated by the power of the thrusts that Jiwon's performed. Garam, who stays back the whole fight, witness how the explosion destroy his men, the 2 major general monarchs, in a single attack, while Siren can only screams getting swayed by the explosion. A moment later, as the 2 monarchs turn to pieces, Garam expresses how impressive that is for Jiwon, who able to exerts that much power with just physical force alone. Jiwon, who's panting, gasping for air, seeing how Garam, the top 5 strongest major general monarch, sees him with his excitement, saying that Jiwon is worth a fight. It is also reminds him of that time, 900 years ago. There was a mayor that looked for the monarchs of the 12 regions. All the monarchs rejected the mayor's request, but he never gave up, and the very last region he visited was the 9th region. It was Mullark, as he meets with Garam, where he is requesting to meet with the monarch of pitch darkness. While at that, he also asks Garam to lend him his strength so Mullark can climb the illusion tree. He explains that this world's value of existence and exaltation of life isn't normal, telling him to remember the anger and suffering Garam experienced when he was one of the weak. then tries to persuade that this world can still be changed if they destroy the first nightmare at the top of the illusion tree. Garam thoughts that Mullark's idea is a mere delusion, adding how now he knows why Pitch Darkness didn't want to meet with Mullark. With his full spirit power in play, he says that the Almighty Land is a place that's only for the strong, and if he wants to change that, then he asks him to show that he is capable of doing it, calling out to the mayor, Mullark. They then fought for 3 days and 3 nights, and on the 3rd day, Garam acknowledged the strength of the mayor, as he is stuck at the boulder in the Almighty Land, defeated by Mullark, who doesn't even have a scratch on his. Unconscious on the stone, Mullark expresses how he can't believe a monarch like Garam is an adapter, which he thinks that it is unfortunate. Though, back then Garam thought that if he is that strong without using magic, then he is qualified to talk about the illusion tree. And after that, Mullark ran around chaos, formed an expedition party that happened 900 years ago. He headed for the abyss in order to change the world, managed to fight the first nightmare at the top of the illusion tree, and get the fruits of resurrection. But, after the monarch stole the fruits, there was no longer any news of him, and nothing had changed since. And right at this moment, Jaehwan tries again, with all of his power. He gathers it at the tip of his unsheathed sword. He thrusts towards the monarch into a single point. Garam doesn't flinch, admitting that Jaehwan is indeed have a powerful attack, but as he summons his spirit power, he tells Jaehwan that power isn't enough. The power from the thrusts meets with the barrier that Garam makes. The barrier is so powerful seemingly become an immovable object. As he defends against the thrust, he says that while Jaehwan has got the right cards in his hand, he doesn't have the class to use it. That shocks Jaehwan, as he unable to believe that Garam manages to block the thrust so easily. Garam uses his leg to step on the floor, dashing him forward. And in an instant, he appears right in front of Jaehwan, saying that at that level, he is no different from a child that's holding a sword. That powerful punch enough to send Jaehwan away, smashing him into the wall of the palace. A moment later, Garam tells him to get up, as he assumes that Jaehwan is not done yet with the fight. And indeed he is not done, angry and determined to slay the major general monarch in front of him. Right at this moment, Garam summons all of his spirit power, manifested into fire coating his body and hand. With his stance that looks like a martial artist, he provokes Jaehwan to show how strong he is for him to dare to speak of the illusion tree. With that punch alone, Jaehwan able to know that Garam is extremely stronger than the 2 monarchs combined from before. Garam is not using a special technique, even if he tries to read him with question. It's just experience that he has stack up that shows up. That makes Jaehwan wonders on how Garam is so strong. To figure it out, he dashes forward without holding his power down. He appears right in front of Garam, as he wonders how can be experience alone be that strong, while thrusting his sword. Noticing what happens, Garam provokes further, hoping that Jaehwan's reckless attack isn't all that's left from him. So Jaehwan tries another way of attacking, where he disappears and instantly appears behind Garam. Using all of his power, Jaehwan performs his world thrust again toward the monarch. Even with the help of his unique world's power, Garam doesn't even flinch. But then, Garam turns around, saying that's only a cheap trick, and punch Jaehwan. Despite however ready Jaehwan is, the punch coming in strong. What's surprising him more is that Garam doing a thrust with only just his fist. Fortunately, Jaehwan manages to dodge that attack, but Garam jumps forward to Jaehwan. With his powerful fist he appears again right in front of Jaehwan, using his own technique to thrust against the man who literally thrusted for 2,000 years. That devastating attack lands on Jaehwan, blasting him on the ground. As Garam lands, he explains that spirit power attack don't work on him, and in the end, the spirit power that Jaehwan uses is something that the system cannot supply. And Garam knows that Jaehwan is an awakened, who are trying to destroy the system's world. But because of that, all of them, awakened, don't know that this world is someone's unique world. Awakened is one that build their own world, called unique world, and using the power from that world to be manifested into the spirit power. Meanwhile, Garam, who is an adapter, has adapted into this unique world's power and uses it as his own. And Jaehwan realizes that. He knows that Garam's power is more natural than spirit power. The world itself is the root of his power that makes Garam seems like the system's world. But that didn't stop Jaehwan, as he uses his moon eye to summons his unique world. Yet, that doesn't do anything to Garam, saying how Jaehwan's still using another non-fundamental technique after all that explanations. He slams Jaehwan into the ground again, as he explained that a unique world without the original creation is no different to poor sorcery. Not having enough out of it, Garam slams Jaehwan again, blasting him away through the ground. As he lands, Garam expresses how disappointing he is, that the awakening he knows of is not this week. Right after that, he summons a crimson fireball and throws it away to Jaehwan. As it lands right in front of Jiwon, the fire grows and the impact goes full display right the moment Jiwon defends against it with his spirit sword. And not only that, the fire also burns his hands, severely injuring him. In the end, he slashes away the fire as he feels frustrated that the momentum of his unique world, the Moon Eye, is not working at all. Garam says how he is meeting an enemy but fails to get excited, implicating how weak Jiwon is, then telling him to hurry up and open the beginning of this world, asking Jiwon to show him the world. What in Jiwon's mind right now is Genesis, mentioned at the 8th gate, the gate of rewards of the 8th gate of hell. In that room, Mullark left behind the reward called the Record of the Abyss, and the story of the 10 stage of awakening was recorded. Following the rules of awakening, the keywords can change, but awakening itself is composed of 6 stages, created in order to destroy the existing world. The first stage called doubt, second stage called understanding, and the third stage called self-surrendering. The 3 stages, the first half of a fallen world, and after the world has fallen, stages are needed to create a new world. The 3 stages of the Genesis, the latter half. And right now, Jiwon felt that the next stage of awakening was happening. However, he really didn't understand what Genesis meant. Garam calls him out as pathetic fool for not being able to use his own world properly, while claiming that he can't wait until the Genesis starts for Jiwon. Using his beads on his hand, Garam then decides that he will forcibly open it and check for himself. It turns out that he knows where Siren, Chungheo, and Kaiman hide, and going to kill them. He knows that for the people of Chaos, their life is everything to them. It's different for them, unlike Garam who can revive anytime. And to them, this world is their only world. Then he strikes to the powerless trio, and now, the strength is stronger than ever before when he used to strike at Jiwon. As he is not going to give them up like that, Jiwon stands right at the incoming attack, going at it with everything he has got. As Siren realizes what's going on, she screams how Jiwon is such an idiot, and the strike resulting in a massive explosion in the palace. Unfortunately, Jiwon manages to save them all, while he seems dealing with a lot of agony himself, having to deal with such a powerful attack. But his mind is somewhere else. Like a lightning struck him, he notices what Garam is saying, and he starts to have a vague understanding now. The only world, as when growing up with your parents, going to school and making friends, crying, laughing, being sad and devastated. All of those countless memories, and all of Jiwon from back then. He never questioned the world he lived in. He existed because he didn't question the world, and the world system was created through that certainty. Then that means what's needed to start Genesis is conviction in his world. Belief is a strong conviction that's forgotten. In order for a world to be born, it means that it needs overpowering belief. But he can't do it alone. He needs to bring not only himself from the current Jiwon, but Jiwon from his past memories needs to yearn for a new world, to believe in his conviction as well. Garam doesn't just letting him be. He punched toward Jiwon again, as the memories of his past old self is saying how the world that he is talking about is fake, telling him to stop escaping from reality, and keep saying how that's the world he has lived in, not the one that they have lived in. There's no reason for them to help him. Jiwon prepares himself to welcome Garam's attack, as he also thinking if he is unable to convince all of his old self, if they are not going to help him, he won't even try to convince them, and he tells them to just get lost, while he doesn't even lost his fighting spirit, gathering all of his strength into his sword going to strike at the incoming attack. In the end, he got blasted into the wall again. That instant Garam appears in front of him again. With his unforgiving punches he beat Jiwon over and over again. And for a good measure, he gathers all of his strength and punches Jiwon into oblivion. As Garam moves away from him, he feels a little disappointed, thinking that Jiwon might be already exhausted and done. But inside his head is a whole of fighting is happening right now, as his old self calling out to him, the one from when he fight the Frost Dragon, asking whether he is planning on dying in a place like that. He adds how if he dies, they are all going to die with him. One who walked the same path as him is himself, as he says that they have come this far. But how can he forget that? Telling him to not make a foolish decision and run away, as both all of himself has tasted enough despair already. So then Jiwon stands up again, as Garam expresses what a shame that is, because he thought that Jiwon would last a long time. But Jiwon doesn't give up, he just simply doesn't know how to. With the help of his sword, he stands up looking at his opponents with eyes full of determination, while at the same time, he glares silently at all of his old self, telling them that he won't give up. Now, many of his old self stand by him, saying how they knew that Jaehwan were a crazy bastard, one who that never forgave. The only thing he give up until now is to persuade his old self into his world. But right after all of Jaehwan from his memories turn into the same world, they become a speck of light and come back to him. In the next moment, Jiwon's body is burning in dark flame and beginning to shine. The world that Jiwon has in his imagination is now turning into reality. Siren stares in astonishment, because she, who had lived for 2,000 years, know what is happening. Jiwon unlocked Genesis, the process of a creation stage 4 of the later half of the awakening. Other than Siren, Garam also knows that. Chill runs down his spine, as he also able to witness what is happening, that the Jiwon's unique world start manifesting. Massive red eye appears, wide open look down upon anything it sees. That is the power to turn lies into the truth, the power to turn belief into reality. The fourth stage of awakening, theory. And from that unique world, Jiwon summons a dark sword, a symbol of objection to everything of his unique world. Jiwon holds the new sword and his old spirit sword in each hand. Garam says how that is his world, as it suits the world and the appearance of the world where everything's corrupted. Then he adds how that is an unfortunate world, a world that was born in order to destroy another world. He dashes towards Jiwon, saying that it won't change a thing just because he manages to fully manifest it and attained his unique world, while Jiwon also dashing towards Garam with the dual sword in hand. As their strike meet, Jiwon now manages to hold his ground against the powerful attack from the Major General Monarch. The explosion alone is so massive, sending shockwave around the palace, that excites Garam so much, as he laughs hysterically, claiming how that is what one would call a fight. In the next second, with lightning speed they trade hundreds of blows, dashing around the palace, while Garam keeps saying how fun that is. He feels like he is fighting against the mayor from 1,000 years ago. He also thanks Jiwon for letting him has that feeling again. However, he moves faster and his next attack manages to slip past Jiwon's defense and land on him, as he says that they need to end the fight eventually. In the next move, Garam grabs Jiwon, then throws him away with all of his strength into the wall. Fortunately, Jiwon manages to land himself on it, but Garam already appears right in front of him, with his bloodlust, ready to punch him again. But this time, using his newly acquired sword, Jiwon meets the punch with his thrust, making another catastrophic explosion in the palace. While Garam enjoys the thrill of fighting against a strong opponent, Jiwon keeps thinking about for what purpose he thrusts and live for. Without giving a break, the monarch appears to punch Jiwon again, where fortunately he manages to dodge the attack. However, in his mind, just for now he thrusts and thrusts and thrusts and keep thrusting again, as if he was at the time where he didn't know the rules of the world, just because he enjoyed it innocently. And as of now, without taking the situation into account, both of them are thankful for being able to meet such a worthy opponent. Jiwon with his thrusts and Garam with his punches, and how they hope that this moment, as they trade hundreds of blows, hoping would last a little longer. Jiwon then provokes Garam back, asking whether that is all the system has to offer, which excites Garam even more, and both passionately putting down their pride as they trade blows again and again. In the middle of that hectic battle, Siren can only screaming in pain, covering both Jaehwan and Chungheo from the rubble and shattered glass and stone that flew everywhere. A moment later, Garam expresses how that is the first time he had that much fun in 1,000 years. To think he would meet such an opponent in chaos, he is extremely excited and touched by the passion he shares with Jiwon for fighting. And Jiwon replies with how he was able to feel that while fighting, like how he has been thrusting for the past 1,000 years. Garam too has been training one skill for 1,000 years. But it's a shame that someone like him is an adapter, repeating the exact same thing as what Monarch said back then to Garam, adding how it's really unfortunate that a monarch like Garam is an adapter. Jiwon doesn't know that conversation between Garam and Monarch, yet he said the same thing. So Garam asks for one thing. He asks what Jiwon wants to do in Chaos, where he explains that he is going to head for the abyss, repeating the same words as Monarch's. Then Garam says how that hollow words are the same as that mayor's, adding that the abyss is lined up with strong people who surpass Garam. He is getting fire up, burning himself with his full power, saying that the great monarchs such as Monarch gave up, and in the end, that mayor failed. How dare a mere human like Jiwon says that he is going to try, as the fire within Garam grow bigger. That is his ultimate moves, as his dark flame devour everything and radiates into the world. He summons another being. It has the shape of an angel, with both of his hand like form a praying, its black gatekeeper general. With it Garam also transform, an embodiment of his thousands of years of training. That shocks Siren, because as far as she knows, Garam is at the rank of a major general. But he wasn't. Because she knows, to be able to summons Gatekeeper and Demigod conversion power means that Garam is already at the Lieutenant General rank. The Black General summons its massive spear, while Garam asks Jiwon to prove his world. With a wave of Garam's hand, the Gatekeeper strikes its spear towards the tiny human that dares to stand in front of it. the gatekeeper who protects the system's world. For someone who loves the system, they are able to summon something like that. Jiwon realizes at the moment he meets the gatekeeper, he lives in order to destroy that world, as he readying his swords. The devastating attack that comes for a demigod, the gatekeeper of the system, meets with the thrust from a tiny human, who lives for no longer than 60 years. They scream at each other, signify that both are not holding back. The crimson dark flame meets the dark energy bursting for a mere thrust that destroys everything that existed. Siren can barely manages to hang on, while holding both Jaehwan and Chungheo, while Garam laughs frantically, saying it's good that Jiwon is able to block the attack of a gatekeeper that has several hundred lives in it. But then, the attack breaks meeting that thrust, shocking Garam. With all what Jiwon has, he burst open the gatekeeper head into pieces. Not only that, right after Jiwon defeats the gatekeeper, he calls out to Garam. And as he turns around, Jiwon is able to fully manifesting his beliefs into a true sword, as massive as 12 stories building. Jiwon bid his farewell to Garam, as it turns out that makes him more excited that finally facing his defeats. With a wave of Jiwon's hand, the sword descent like a lightning strike towards the now puny monarch, as he frantically screaming how he enjoyed the fight. The strike falls, exploding not only the palace they are in, but the whole Resurrection Palace. At the place where the sword is landed, where half of his body is incinerated, Garam lies down in disbelief, to think that he had lost to a mere human. But only after he put into that state now he is seeing it clearly, the eye that watches and rules over everything in this world. The peak of the illusion tree and the end of the abyss, the place where the first nightmare is known to be located at, is the place where Jiwon needs to go. As Jiwon adds that's an enemy he must bring down, lies down flat. Garam says that Jiwon's world won't be popular in the abyss, and that's too cruel of a truth to know in return for losing hope. No one would want to live on after seeing that madness, as he can't believe that weird thing is a world that's in the sky. But if people who believe in Jiwon's world appear, they might be able to find something in them which everyone has lost. As price for that, they will really have to live in that world forever. Right after, Garam asks Jiwon to cut his brain link before his body goes back to the Almighty Land. So Jiwon asks whether he has any last words or not. Garam then speaks. If Jiwon arrive at the abyss, he asks Jiwon to find Kainark to tells him what happened, adding to be careful of Maylad. If he knows that Jiwon has unlocked creation of a world, he won't leave him be. Before cutting the link, Jiwon then asks Garam on why he didn't kill Jiwon, because he should have been able to kill Jiwon easily before he awakened. Inwardly thinking, Garam thoughts how he wanted to become a support that helped another to climb the illusion tree. This world that lacks the value of existence and the nobility of life isn't a normal one. This world can still be changed, only after they destroy the first nightmare that's at the top of the illusion tree. That's the last words of the mayor, Mullark, that lingered in Garam's mind for a long time. In the end, he says that he will just take that as paying off his debt to Mullark, and asks Jiwon to end it already. At this moment, exactly 917 years and 244 days after Mullark's Abyss expedition had failed, Chaos has finally been freed of the Resurrection Palace. As Jaehwan with the help of Siren walks towards where Jiwon is, witnessing how he stabs his sword towards the Lieutenant General after he cut off the brain link. Later that day, at the Gorgon Fortress, Jiwon takes it up upon himself and sees how Jeagle is doing, where he reveals that anyone from Jeagle clan would know a lot about Garam because the Samyang clan, where Garam is originally belonged to, is the one that pushed Jeagle clan out of the Almighty Land and took their place as one of the 5 great clans. And now, since Jiwon messed with one of their clan members, the Samyang clan is bound to get involved. But Jiwon assures him to not worry, as he reveals that he has obtained the Narrow Gate, and there's a lot lower chance that those bastards will come to Chaos ever again. As Jiwon leaves the room, he adds that if one ever come, they might be worth fighting. A few days later, at the plaza of Gorgon Fortress, there are a lot of people gathered to hold the soul farewell procession. Jiwon in the middle of the plaza announcing how it thanks to their fallen comrades they are able to protect Gorgon. Lastly, he tells them that the soul farewell procession will be held for 3 days, and right after they will immediately prepare to go to the abyss. Also, in the middle of the plaza, he prepares something from the beginning. It revealed to be the Narrow Gate. Along with it, Siren escorts Reika, a known monarch from the Almighty Land for the people of Chaos. Right as he faced Jiwon, he prepares to take the sword on his side. Reika tries to beg for his life, but Jiwon tells him to shut up, then cut both of his hand. He screams hysterically as Jiwon explains that he will not kill him there, and wants him to return to the Almighty Land and to deliver a message to his master. He declares, if the pitch darkness wants a war, come and find him anytime, and he will be waiting for him at the top of the illusion tree.